friends, Jambo. Welcome back to another video. Welcome if this is your first time here. Today I'm gonna talk about our obsession with genetics when it comes to hair growth. So for every video on YouTube on how to grow hair, there's always gonna be that one or two comments about genetics. What about genetics? Genetics does play a big role when it comes to hair growth. Genetics this, genetics that. There's always gonna be that one or two comments, and today I would love to share my thoughts on that. So first of all, I would love to thank each and every one of you for subscribing to my channel. For the past 3 months, I've been gaining a lot of new subscribers, and oh my goodness, thank you to all of you. Please feel welcome, and if you end up loving this video, don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and also don't forget to turn on the notification bell so that you can get notified every time I post. A lot of us grew up with the belief that we couldn't grow long hair because we thought we didn't have the good hair genes. I'm first of all going to try and explain some of the places where I think this stereotype of not having the good hair genes comes from, and then later on in the video I'll talk about genetics and the things that genetics actually determines when it comes to hair and hair growth. Good hair genes was and still is oftentimes associated with being mixed with another race that's not black. Put simply, a lot of people used to believe and still believe that a person who is fully black cannot grow long hair. And if a black person has long hair, people will still insist that somewhere far back in their family line, there was an interracial encounter, especially if they have a loose curl pattern, but that's gonna be a discussion for another day. I also think it's worth mentioning that in Kenya, the brainwashing was a little different. A lot of us used to believe that only people from specific tribes had the good hair genes. The Somali, the Borana, and I would even say the Kikuyus as well, as some of the tribes that were believed to have the good hair genes. To be honest though, a lot of people from these tribes do have amazing hair. I think this belief that certain tribes have better hair genes compared to others is heavily influenced by things like texturism, colorism, and Eurocentrism. People from these tribes tend to have either looser curl patterns, which is where the texturism comes in, or lighter skin tones, which is where the colorism comes in, or have other features that are generally considered Eurocentric. As I kind of alluded, I'm from Kenya. And during my childhood, the only two representations of long hair in black people that I ever saw were an afro and locks. Other than that, I cannot remember ever seeing a black person on TV, especially one with my skin tone, with long unbraided type 4 hair, especially 4C hair. I think this lack of representation of black people with long unbraided natural type 4 hair, and more specifically 4C hair, made it easy for a lot of us to believe that we don't have the good hair genes. We mostly saw black people with our skin tones wearing straight wigs or perming and flat ironing their hair. We rarely ever saw black people with long hair in its natural state. And I think by now, most of us do understand the power of representation. One of the main reasons why a lot of us are starting our natural hair growth journeys is because we see so many black women and men on different social media platforms with waist-length hair, bra strap length hair, with just really long hair in general. And this is something that a lot of us didn't grow up seeing, especially if you were born in the 90s and the 80s. We didn't really grow up seeing black people with waist-length hair. As much as we do have some tribes in Africa, like in Chad, we do have a tribe that has been growing long hair for the longest time. But this is something that most of us didn't know because we didn't see this kind of stuff on TV. The interesting thing is that locks was the one proof we had that black people can actually grow extremely long hair, especially dark-skinned people with type 4 hair. But there were and still are so many negative stereotypes when it comes to locks. For example, the term dreadlocks may be considered to be derogatory because of its origin. The origin of the term dreadlocks is thought to be in Kenya during colonialism. The British soldiers were fighting against Kenyan soldiers who are famously known as the Mau Mau fighters. A big shout out to the Mau Mau fighters because they hastened the process of Kenya gaining independence. The Mau Mau fighters allowed their hair to lock up as a symbol of rebellion against the British soldiers. So when the British soldiers came across the Mau Mau fighters with their hair locked up, they viewed it as dreadful, hence the name dreadlocks. In America, Black people's hair has been subject to countless discrimination. Natural hair was and still is in some settings deemed as unkempt and needed to be tamed by either flat ironing or perming. In the 60s and 70s, wearing natural hair was considered to be a political statement in America. So Black people who wore their natural hair during that time were viewed as a threat by white people. And Black people who did not want to be viewed as a threat by white people ended up conforming to the European standards of beauty by either flat ironing or perming their hair. Black people in America especially didn't really have the freedom to fully explore their natural hair and learn things such as length retention and the mechanics of having tighter coils. They didn't really have the luxury of learning things like this and just really figuring out these types of stuff about their hair as we do now. In my opinion, this made it very easy to fall for the "we don't have good hair genes" narrative, because people rarely saw Black people's hair grow to its full maximum potential length. It has been so bad to the point that laws have had to be passed in order for us to freely wear our hair in its natural state without being discriminated against. And this doesn't even make sense because other races do not need laws to protect them against discrimination against what's growing naturally from their scalp. There are also studies out there that are obviously very misleading and further perpetuate the narrative that Black people's hair grows the slowest compared to other races, or Black people's hair cannot grow long in general. A 2005 study apparently found that Black people's hair grows the slowest compared to other races. Asians were found to have the fastest hair growth, averaging to about 6 inches per year. I'm gonna repeat that study. Asians were found to have the fastest hair growth, averaging to about 6 inches per year. I want you guys to remember that because I'm going to talk about that. Caucasians came second with a hair growth averaging to a little more than 5 inches per year, and Black people's hair was found to have the slowest hair growth, averaging to about 4 inches per year. First of all, 6 inches of hair growth in a year is what we now consider to be average no matter the race. If you go to Google and search what is the average hair growth rate, it's gonna tell you it's 0.5 inches per month, which is 6 inches per year, no matter the race. So this 2005 study that came to the conclusion that Asians have the fastest hair growth, averaging to about 6 inches per year, needs to be re-examined because, as we can see, 6 inches is actually what we now consider to be average. Also, there are so many factors that I feel like they probably didn't put into consideration when doing this 2005 study. While any of these people suffering from any nutritional deficiencies that can affect hair growth, we know that Black people are 3 times more likely to suffer from anemia compared to other races. And anemia is caused by lack of iron, and iron is very important when it comes to hair growth. So was this something that was put into consideration? Also, we have some health conditions that affect hair growth. Was this something that they put into consideration? In 2005, that was a time when Black people were still learning to embrace their natural hair. We didn't really have a lot of information when it comes to things like length retention. So the Black people they did this study on, were they taking care of their hair properly, or were they experiencing a lot of breakage? There are just so many things. And especially when it comes to Black people's hair, our hair is very beautiful, but it's also very complex. All these factors that I'm mentioning, I doubt they put them into consideration. So them coming up with this conclusion that Black people's hair grows the slowest compared to other races is just some BS. Now let's talk about the things that genetics actually determines when it comes to hair. One of the things that genetics determines is hair texture. Some people have curly hair, others have coily hair, others have straight hair, while others have wavy hair. The second thing that genetics determines is the thickness of each individual hair strand. Some people have thicker hair strands compared to others. The third thing is how many hair follicles we have. The fourth thing is how many total hair strands we have on our head. This is what is normally referred to as hair density. The other thing that genetics determines is our hair growth rate. As I mentioned previously, The average hair growth rate for everyone, no matter the race, is about 0.5 inches per month, which is about 6 inches per year. So on average, most of us should be able to grow at least 6 inches of hair in a year. But again, this is determined by genetics and it's gonna be different for every individual. So for one person, it might be 0.5 inches. For another person, it might be 0.6. For another person, it might be 0.4 inches and so on. The other thing that genetics determines is our hair growth cycle. So each hair strand undergoes the 4 stages of the hair growth cycle: the anagen, catagen, telogen, and exogen phase. I'm particularly interested in the anagen phase. This is the period when a hair strand is actively growing, and it usually lasts between 3 to 8 years depending on one's genetics. Studies show that Asians have the longest anagen phase, but I think we just proved that these studies can be quite unreliable because there's so many factors that are not put into consideration, especially when it comes to Black people's hair. The anagen phase also determines how long one's hair can grow in their lifetime. This is what people normally refer to as terminal length. So assuming that a person has an anagen phase that lasts for 3 years and their growth rate is about 6 inches per year, this person's hair can only grow 18 inches long no matter what they do and no matter how well they take care of their hair. This is what is referred to as terminal length. Similarly, a person with a 7-year anagen phase can grow up to 42 inches of hair if their growth rate is 6 inches per year. The anagen phase can be shortened by things such as nutritional deficiencies, high stress levels, hormonal imbalances, certain medications and treatments, overstyling, and traction alopecia, which is usually caused by wearing hairstyles that are too tight. In as much as some people do have a short anagen phase, the anagen phase can be shortened by the things that I've already mentioned. Also, if a person has not been consistently taking care of their hair, for example, they're not moisturizing regularly, they're over manipulating their hair, or they're using too much heat, then eventually they'll experience breakage, which will make it seem as though their hair growth is stagnant when it's just been breaking. In this case, that person's anagen phase has nothing to do with the person's hair not growing any longer, but rather their hair practices. So the anagen phase determines your maximum potential hair length, but your hair practices determine whether you'll ever reach that maximum potential hair length. Nowadays, a lot of the genetic stock when it comes to hair growth is being centered around the anagen phase. For example, you'll find someone leaving a comment like, genetics does play a big role when it comes to hair growth. Genetics determines how much hair you can grow in your lifetime, which I agree with, and I've already talked about that in detail. But the thing is, despite the fact that genetics determines how much hair you can grow in your lifetime, good hair practices is what's gonna determine whether you're ever gonna reach that maximum potential hair length. And also, I don't want you guys to feel intimidated by the anagen phase. As I mentioned, the anagen phase can last anywhere between 3 to 8 years. If, for example, you have an anagen phase of about 3 years and you have a growth rate of 6 inches per year, that's about 18 inches of hair in your lifetime. 18 inches of hair is really long hair, so I don't want you guys to feel intimidated. Think of the anagen phase like height. Some people are tall, some people are short, but at the end of the day, all of us are amazing and unique in our own ways. You could have a short anagen phase and have thick hair. You could have a long anagen phase and have thin hair. There's a lot of diversity when it comes to hair, and I just think that everyone's hair is beautiful and amazing. Don't ever feel intimidated by all the talk we have going on when it comes to the anagen phase, genetics, and all that. So in as much as genetics does play a big role when it comes to hair growth, Black people do not have bad hair genes. Black people do not have the slowest hair growth rate compared to other races. And I hope that I've been able to prove why these two statements are not true throughout this video. So my advice would be, take care of your hair, be consistent, make sure your hair is moisturized, make sure that you're getting all your nutritional requirements, make sure that you're getting your iron, your zinc, your B vitamins, and products do not grow hair, so don't go trying one product after another that's advertised to grow long hair in like 2 weeks or whatever amount of time. Products do not grow hair. Do you think we have an obsession with genetics when it comes to hair growth as Black people? I would love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comment section. If you have something that you would love to add, if you have something that you want to expound on, you can leave your comments and thoughts in the comment section. Otherwise, that's all I have for you guys in this video. I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye!